Hello and welcome to another episode of Interviews with Hyperpolyglots. I'm the president, Dr. Usman Chohan, and today I have one of our recent members to join, Siru Laine, who is from Finland but lives in Catalonia. So welcome, Siru.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Let's talk a little bit about a tweet that you had put, which I really enjoyed. After becoming a member, you had posted that this is what people who thought that this wouldn't get me anywhere, learning languages is useless, will take that, tomaja, right? And I thought that was wonderful,
Yeah.
very heartening, because we all as hyperpolyglots share that journey of, navigating capitalism, and people say, well, what's the point? How are you going to, what's the goddamn reason you're doing it? So if you could tell us about the sentiment behind that.
Well, it's mostly like throughout my studies and my youth, people were telling me that there's no use in learning languages, which is kind of weird because there are not that many people who speak Finnish. So we kind of have to learn other languages so that we can communicate. And I'm not sure if it was jealousy or just, I don't know why they kept telling me that. And like one of these people who told me that was my teacher, which is kind of strange because they should be the ones who encourage you and just want to see you do your best. But I don't know, that was a bit harsh, I think. And that's, I think that was also one of the reasons why I decided, like, nobody's going to stop me.
And that's fascinating because in Finland, there are two official languages, Finnish and Swedish, but just about everybody I ever met in Helsinki was absolutely fluent. And so it seems like everybody in at least Helsinki is trilingual. That's a very good start to get to 6. So what are the other 3 you speak or more in languages?
Well, besides Finnish, Swedish, and English, there are Icelandic, Esperanto, Italian, Spanish, Catalan, and now I'm learning Basque.
Which of these has been the most difficult for you to learn, given what you knew from the start as a young person?
Icelandic.
How does it work? What is so special about this language? I don't know it personally.
Well, I lived in Iceland for 6 years, and when I moved there, I didn't speak any Icelandic. I spoke Swedish and German, so that kind of helped me a bit. But yeah, it's just outside of Iceland, it's really hard to hear any Icelandic, and because this was 14 years ago, so I didn't have a computer of my own, so I really couldn't get acquainted with the language beforehand. And it's just so different than any other language I had learned, because it has like the different cases, the case system is different, and I always say that it's like German, but like a few steps more.
Right, and so you are currently living in Catalonia, is that correct?
Yeah.
What is it like there, and how is you're working there as well? What is life like, and how are things going?
They are going quite well. It took me a few years to get used to, well, mostly the climate, and also it's a bit difficult to live here as a blonde looking like a tourist, and but it's nice. I like the culture, and I like how open people are, and well, I like the language. I like Spanish and Catalan, so it's really enjoyable.
Sounds fantastic. I have been to Helsinki 3 times. I have quite a few good friends, 2 very, very close friends from there. So I tried to go there as many summers as possible, but I ended up going 3 summers. And one of our things was, so here's my Finnish for you, Rypätään Suomessa. So let's have a good time in Finland. And we traveled the friends to Serbia, Macedonia, and Estonia. Serbia, Macedonia, Estonia. And so I have very fond memories of Helsinki. And one of the things that I noticed was that everybody seems to navigate, well, certainly Swedish because they're taught it, but English also very well. So I want your comments on the Finnish education system, which is ranked very high, because I think that had a big role behind it. And in terms of promoting multilingualism, what are your thoughts?
When I was living in Finland, I left when I was 19. I didn't really think anything about the education system, but when I've been abroad, I've really noticed that people look up to it, and that it's really special. Well, we have to learn 2 languages at least. We have to learn Swedish for at least 3 years, and then we have to learn another language, which like in almost every case is English. And then I think I would say majority of the people also take on another language, and I also think that it's encouraged. And no, and that we also have to learn different topics as well, not just languages and Finnish, but we also like, even though you study many languages, you still have to learn all the other stuff as well, like maths and physics, chemistry, history, biology, all this. So it's quite diverse.
I think that it's paying off already, because when you navigate Helsinki as a foreigner, it's very easy to do. And you'd be surprised. Yeah, maybe Finnish people are a bit shy at the beginning, but they really are wonderful people. So I'm getting to share some Finnish stories after such a long time, because there are not many Finns out there, as you know. So, and one thing about Finnish that also makes it different is that it belongs to a different language family, as you know very well. What are your thoughts about knowing a kind of structure of a language that is different, a different family? Does it help you to learn? Does it hinder? What are the thoughts of being from a different language family at the start?
Yeah, I think I'm incredibly lucky to have Finnish as my native language, because it's just so different compared to all the Indo-European languages or the major languages in Europe, and it has helped me a lot, especially with the case system. And but there are also those are the pros, but there are also the cons. Like, for example, it's not easy for me to always remember like the gender of words, for example, or the articles in different languages, because we don't have them. So it takes a while.
That's very interesting. So Finnish doesn't have gender, you're saying? It's one of those languages without? And it doesn't have articles either.
No. And we only have one word for he and she. So like it's completely genderless.
So one of the things that I found fascinating was that in this Finno-Ugric family, Hungarian is also part of it, but the gap between Finnish and Hungarian is as wide as the gap between English and Persian. Just because you speak English doesn't mean I do understand a lot of Persian, but because I know things from the Indo part, the Indus River part, and the European part, so I get Persian without really trying. But the gap between English and Persian is so vast, you really have to dig deep into it. And I suppose that's the same with Finnish and Hungarian. So if somebody presents you a Hungarian text, maybe the mechanics deep down work like that, but not really, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's I've studied Hungarian a bit, and like it's actually funny. It took me quite a while to understand why I was always getting things wrong. And then I realized that, okay, it works like Finnish. So you don't have prepositions. You put what would be preposition, you put it after the word, like in Finnish. And I think my brain was just so wired to learn Indo-European way of putting things. And but it's, yeah, if you give me a Hungarian text, it's like, I might notice that, okay, this is a verb, but that's it. Because I've studied it. But if you give like a Finnish person who has never studied Hungarian, if you give them a text in Hungarian, it's like, no, you cannot even see what's a number.
Oh, okay. And so how is your experience as a professional translator? Because that is what you do, yes?
Yeah.
And so what is it like? What goes on? What happens?
Well, I've been freelancing for 3 years now. I came to Barcelona because I was an internal linguist in a company. So I focused on texts about clinical trials and like medicine, like package leaflets. And I like them. I also do proofread other stuff like marketing and HR things, but then I might not know the terminology that well. So I always make sure that the people know that it's more like checking the grammar and everything. But I specialize in clinical trials.
So this is very interesting. We did an interview with another member of HYPIA, in addition to you, who is also a translator. He's from Brazil. His name is Hitsin, and he was also talking about technical manuals being a large part of the repertoire of what you actually do. The like engineering stuff, and engineering has its own terminology. The same with clinical trials. So do you find that you end up learning a lot more science than you would have, because clinical trials have a very specific vocabulary? So have you ended up learning a lot of science? What is that like?
Yeah, definitely. When I studied translation, I never thought I would be like translating medical texts, because I always wanted to translate books. And then when I got into, like, I had to translate in the company, I had to translate some like medical and technical things, and I was like, this is actually very interesting. And I have like I have two brothers and my father who are in the like medical industry, so I kind of felt, I also felt natural, like, because I've grown up with that environment. So
That's very interesting. Having a bit of that family background exposes you to the vocabulary to do this.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
here is, so you attended the Polyglot gathering, the video conference as well. What are your thoughts about that as an initiative?
I think it's wonderful. This was my third gathering, well, the first online, but I had been in two as well, and it just felt like home. And it was because you never knew in what language someone would come and talk to you, and it didn't bother anyone if you just didn't know any word and in one language and you just switch for a bit. And nobody, because if I do it here, people are like, what's wrong with you, like but there like nobody reacted, and nobody like called you a freak or anything that might happen in the real world.
Well, there are prejudices against young people who are passionate about languages because they're asked why the hell they're doing this. That speaks to the initial question about the tweet that you had.
Yeah.
And so I also experienced that a little bit, but as we get older, it tends to become a very strong part of our identity. What do you think?
Yeah. I agree completely. Because I think once you have it, it's like I don't think I could imagine doing anything else, like to do anything that's not related to languages. I would just not feel complete. And it like for some people it might sound like a cliche, but it's become like, it's always been part of my life. And after so many years, I can't imagine anything else.
So here's the thing about HYPIA as well as Polyglot Gathering and a few, is that these types of organizations focus on inclusion. And one thing that I've noticed, and maybe you consider it important, perhaps not, but for me it's a bit of an issue, is that there is an underrepresentation of women in the polyglot space. So there was the book Babel No More, which came out like almost a decade ago, and it noticed that there was a strong overrepresentation of men in the polyglot sphere. For HYPIA, the ratio currently is about 70-30. Now, I know from practical experience that there's no such impediment to women speaking lots of languages of any sort, but it seems to be that either there is a shyness to apply. Some women may feel that they are not at that level, and some guys may take that leap and say, yeah, I'm good enough, even though they really aren't. And so there may be some reasons why that, but I would like to have further representation. And I'm saying that because I appreciate that you reached out and you truly are a hyperpolyglot. And so if more women were to apply, join, I think it'd be wonderful. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, definitely. It's quite strange that there are like not that many women, because I know quite a few. I don't know if they consider themselves as hyperpolyglots, but they are polyglots. And I don't know if I don't know what the reason would be, but it would be really nice to see more of us.
Absolutely. Well, we're trying to work on it. And with this impediment also exists at the micro level. So the macro level being people not applying and joining organizations is the big picture problem. But the micro level thing is they're a bit more hesitant to come for interviews like this, which is unfortunate because part of the message of HYPIA is that it crosses all of the boundaries. So for example, you'll see a lot of ethnic diversity and national diversity at HYPIA. We cover all the continents, people of all skin colors, people of all economic backgrounds too. Some might be more well off than others, but it doesn't matter. And same with the gender thing. So breaking these barriers, it's a two-way street, right? So we reach out and say you should join, but then they have to grasp the hand. That's an issue. What do you think?
Exactly. And also the other thing is that yeah, I think that's the issue. And I've been trying to tell my friends that like there's this association, and I think you would qualify, and you should really think about it. But I don't really know if they're just being modest, or thinking like, what if I apply and then I don't qualify, which I really doubt. But
yeah, I see the point in that there's a lot of research behind this in the psychology where, for example, men are much more likely to take the leap even if they're not good enough. And women, if they're not sure that they're good enough, they'll say, well, I'm not a hyperpolyglot. I know it's 6, but they're not perfect. And the guy will say, well, it's like 4.5, so that's fine, right? And then that kind of thing. So this risk aversion, which is also socially constructed, but there may be something deeper in the biology, which I'm not an expert, I can't comment on. But I think that this gender parity thing is unfortunate. And I appreciate, for example, that you would say, yes, I'm good enough, and you are good enough. And so that is important. And consider this aspect of HYPIA as well. There's no money involved. Nobody has to pay to join. So it's very much, as I was saying in an earlier interview, based on anarchist principles. So we all get together, we create an organization. It has no real center, and people share. So it's a very different model from what you see a lot on YouTube. And it allows people such as you who are not marketing yourselves as a superstar, a super Instagram hyperpolyglot model. You're just a regular person doing stuff with languages. So this is that kind of thing. So we get less of the glamour, but we have more of the substance. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I don't know if people think that to be able to be a part of something like this, you should be like an influencer with like 5,000 followers and everything. So yeah, I guess they're just, I don't know, nervous. I was nervous. I was hesitant to apply because I wasn't sure I would qualify. And then some of my friends were like, try, like you'll never know if you don't try.
Well, maybe there's something for HYPIA to think about in that, because maybe we come off as too elitist. There's something fundamental about the elitism of HYPIA, because if you look at the graph of people in speaking languages, the number of people, so it's a histogram, the number of people, and this is the number of languages they speak. So 1, everybody does, everybody is functional and normal. 2, 3, 4. 4 is already really incredible for a person to pull off 4 languages. It's remarkable.
It is.
And then a 5th, that shows extra effort. So for example, the Finnish education system, even if you're top of your class, the max you would get is 4. 5 is something beyond that. And then 6, and that's where things begin at HYPIA. So the low bar would, like, I would be like 7, 8. That's kind of low for HYPIA. So it hits like this. So we're really dealing in this group, they're automatic barriers to entry. And HYPIA has to then shape its personality to be inclusive, but it's dealing with a small sample that is already exclusive. Did you find that it was elitist and intimidating? Is that part of the problem we have?
No, it wasn't like about the elite. It just, I think it was more about me being insecure and like feeling like oh, I'll like what happens if I apply and they're like no, sorry, not this time. it was about my insecurities. But like I have friends who applied, and I was like, well, of course you're gonna get in. Like, so it was a personal thing.
I understand. And so people always bear all sorts of insecurities working in a complex society, that we can't be perfect at everything. And if we are, then we'll be attacked for being perfect. So we mitigate our skills sometimes. So
Yeah.
the issue then is that we need to tell people that there is no harm in applying. I mean, developing a fear of rejection is also part of growing up, but HYPIA is not looking to reject people. And I don't know if we communicate that well, but it's merit-based. So for example, an interpreter like you, a very straight sell. You obviously make a living from it. You have to be good at it, right? But for other people, if they do it for passion, they're like what you fear in the imposter syndrome. In the modern life, it's that fake it till you make it type thing, and we're all trying to build brands and survive. So they're like, oh, what if they catch me? So an anecdote for
exactly.
you is that there have been 2 people who were members, and they were able to pull off that they were good at it, but then out of their own admission later on. One was 6 months and one was 9 months after joining. So this is very early in HYPIA's history, 2017-ish, 2018. And they said, actually, I'm a fraud. And so then HYPIA had a dilemma, because it said, well, you did persuade the assessors that you could do it. And they said, well, I was kind of an actor. One of them is actually a professional actor. So to pull off dialogue in a foreign language is part of that LA culture, the Hollywood culture anyways. And it was a young aspiring actor who wasn't getting roles, and he said, no, I was just pulling it off because I wanted this resume. I'm sorry, I am a fraud. And I said, well, we have to give this guy a chance, because if you do anticipate learning them, that in self is credit. But the guy's like, no, I'm a fraud and I hate myself. So it was probably some guilt that that person was going through in their own life. And they said, no, I'm awful and I hate myself. And what do you do with that? Because you still want to be encouraging. But these are the kinds of human interactions that are very challenging for an association that wants to be anarchist and egalitarian, because we want to give everybody a chance, but we don't know what to do. What do you think?
Well, first of all, it's very impressive that someone could pull that off. Like but and also good for them to admit. I don't know if I would have done it. Like I would have maybe just thought like, okay, I don't really speak the languages, but maybe now I should learn a bit so that I can own up to it, what I said I would.
Yeah, good.
Like learn about it that way.
I agree. So this is the challenge, where there is actually a stressful dimension to joining a organization or a hyperpolyglot culture, is that people start to look within if they're good enough. And I haven't thought much about that, because the idea was to get people together without judging. It's especially a platform for regular people doing extraordinary things, but then the subject gets into its own mind and says, am I extraordinary enough to be a regular person? Yeah. And so I think ultimately the message is that it's people like you, people like me, and the others who are just living their lives, but incorporating languages in different ways. Some do really unique things. Some apply it as part of normal life, rudimentary course of life, the routine, and they still do amazing things. Either way, this association is for you. It's not for me or for others. And so the videos that we're doing here and talking to you about living in Iceland, being from Finland, working in Catalonia, and all those things, is to share that you can have a normal life and still do extraordinary things. Do you agree?
Yes, completely.
And do you plan to learn more languages in the future, or is this the cut?
No, it's like, I know some people who are like, by the time I'm 40, I want to know 30 languages. Like that has never been my goal, but it's always like if I have a chance, like for example, a few weeks ago, I started learning North Sami and Quechua, because I found these good courses online, and I was like, well, I have to stay inside. And finally I have the time. So, and like my goal is, well, I don't know if I will ever be fluent in Quechua. I've never been to South America. But it's interesting to see how the language works. And so maybe it's the linguist part of me who like wants to learn it and not like, oh, I want to go to Peru and talk to these people. But I will definitely learn more, but it's not about the numbers.
Yeah, well said. That's very encouraging. Siru, I'd like to thank you for your time. These are always becoming crisper and fresher interviews, but there's a lot packed into it. I hope the message to our audience is that people like you and me, regular people, but we are trying to do extraordinary things, and that's part of the wonder of being in HYPIA. So thank you very much for your time.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
And see you later.
See ya.